So I see we've already got quite a few people, quite a few attendees, 18, 22 people are loading in. So this is good. Um, okay, folks, so we're going to get started fairly quickly just because we've got a lot to get through in this presentation today. So, moi, je suis Pamela Isfeld, la présidente de la PASE, et je vous souhaite la bienvenue. I am here with Dan Whalen, who is our executive director, and Paul Raven, who is our labor relations team leader, FSD expert and chief negotiator, so never gets to take a vacation like ever. And Paul is going to be leading the presentation. And I will let each of them introduce themselves as we go through. But before we start, I just want to acknowledge that I am chairing this meeting from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And we acknowledge and respect them as the past, present, and future guardians and caretakers of these lands. And I know people are joining in from all different places, so I encourage you to take a moment to think about the traditional peoples of the territories that you're currently located on, and what that all means for the lives that we all lead today. Um, a couple of caveats before we start. We will take questions at the end, and I ask you to please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I'll keep track of them, and if there are a bunch on the same thing, I will kind of summarize them when we get to the end so that Paul can answer them. But I do want to remind everybody that this is not a forum for individual questions about your specific cases. This is more, a general overview. And it's also not intended to be a deep dive into the full FSDs. I mean, there's FSD training that is offered by Global Affairs Canada. We urge everyone to take advantage of that training. If you have specific questions or anything like that, please follow up at info@pafso.com. But this is intended to focus on really, what you need to know especially for a first posting. So first things, relocation things, and, issues like that. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you guys.
Well, merci beaucoup. Thanks so much, Pam. Je me présente, Dan Whalen. Ça me fait grand plaisir d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. I'm the executive director of PAFSO and also a proud former Foreign Service officer of over 12 years, 2 postings. Very happy to be back with the Foreign Service community. And very interested to hear our presentation and questions today under the very strong leadership and experience of Paul Raven, our FSD expert. So please, Paul, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thanks, Dan. Just before I maximize the deck, there are a few things. I will be speaking primarily in English. But the deck is bilingual et moi aussi je suis bilingue. Alors, si vous avez des questions, s'il vous plaît, posez vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Okay, so let's get going. Well, I guess Pam already introduced me, but I'm Paul. I'm the labor relations. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Pam.
I see we've got a hand. Sorry. Could you if you have a question, could you put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen? Thanks. We'll do questions that way, so that we don't so Paul can get through all the material that he's got here. So thanks.
All right. Thanks, Pam. Yeah, so I'm the labor relations team leader at PAFSO. I'm also serving as a negotiator. Been with PAFSO almost a decade now, and yeah. In my previous role, I was responsible for the FSD file, and I still represent PAFSO along with Dan at the NJC at the FSD table there. Okay, so let's get to the presentation. All right, so today we're going to be going through some common questions and issues in relation to first postings. We'll be focusing more on FSD 15, which relates to relocation, but also touching on some other directives as well, and just some things that may be of value to note. So we'll start by touching on relocation to and from other locations. So most people will be relocating from what's called their old place of duty to their new place of duty. So basically where you're currently assigned to where you will be assigned. But that's not always the case. There are occasions where someone is relocating from another location. Perhaps someone's been approved to telework from somewhere, or they've been on leave without pay and are currently living somewhere other than where their current assignment is located. Up until 2022, that wasn't a problem. Basically, Global Affairs would relocate people to and from telework locations and other locations that weren't places of duty up to the cost of what it would have been to relocate from the old place of duty to the new place of duty. That stopped for about 3 years, from 2022 to 2025. The employer decided that they didn't have the scope or the authority to cover those types of relocations anymore. But then we introduced a new version of the directives last year, April 1st, 2025, and it's happening again. So just clarifying that it is possible to relocate to or from a location that is not a place of duty. That being said, there are some limitations. If you're moving from somewhere other than your current place of duty, there's limitations in terms of what you get as far as local transportation expenses and the amount of time that you get in temporary accommodation. So just flagging that. Most people will be relocating from where they're currently assigned, but that's not always the case. So just touching on official routings a little bit. So an official routing is set by the employer, usually by the official travel service provider in conjunction with Global Affairs and whatever mission it applies to. And it's basically setting out what the most direct but also appropriate routing is from A to B, from, for example, headquarters in Ottawa, Gatineau to a particular mission. The official routings are important for a few reasons. One, they need to establish how much money should be provided to relocate from one place to another. But also they need to set out what routing someone should follow if they're going to be selecting business class as their mode of travel. Not everybody qualifies for business class, but some people do. It depends on the length of the journey. But if somebody is traveling via business class and they want to be reimbursed for that airfare, they have to demonstrate that they've traveled by the official routing. And if someone's traveling via economy, they don't necessarily have to travel by the official routing, but the amount that is provided is based on the official routing. So if you end up paying more for your travel because you're electing to go a different route, the amount you're receiving to cover those expenses is capped based on the official routing. So there have been some challenges with official routings over the years. They're not always provided on time. My understanding is that after having some conversations with the employer was that they would likely be provided close to on time this year. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But if you're communicating with your FSD advisor and they're unable to provide you with an official routing, please send an email to info@PAFSO, and either myself or a member of my team will do their best to try and get that sorted out for you. And just in terms of process, just to clarify that PAFSO does not have a voice in establishing official routings. This is set by the official travel service provider, who I believe is still Amex, in conjunction with the missions and headquarters as well. Okay. So just a little bit about traveling before the RTA is issued. So if you're not familiar with the acronym RTA, it stands for the Relocation Travel Allowance. So this is the amount of money that either an individual or a family is provided with to facilitate getting from one place of duty to another. It's not a great idea to travel before the RTA has been issued for a few reasons. Firstly, before the RTA has been issued, it's still unclear as to how much money you'll be provided with. So you may end up spending more on your tickets than the employer is willing to provide, and which would leave you potentially out of pocket a certain amount. But the other element is if you travel before the RTA has been provided, they could require that you provide receipts for your travel. Basically, your relocation becomes accountable at that point. So best practice would be to wait until the travel allowance has been issued. Again, if you're having difficulty with that, if you've asked for the RTA to be provided and it hasn't yet, please send an email to info@PAFSO, and a member of our team will see what they can do to help you out with that. So a little bit about modes of transportation. So until 2025, there were 3 ways you could travel to get from A to B to get from your old place of duty to your new place of duty. And they were by plane, which is considered the default and also the most common way to get from one place of duty to another. There's by car and there's by boat. And up until 2025, you basically had to pick one of those 3 options. So you could fly, you could drive, or you could take a boat. Something new that was introduced with the 2025 version of the FSDs is that you can now mix up the modes of travel. So if you wanted to, fly a leg and then drive another leg, or take a boat part of the way and then a plane and then a car, basically you can mix 2 or 3 of those options together. And my understanding is that the employer will also in some cases consider train if that's of interest to you. So you can actually request that your RTA be built based on the specific modes of travel that is your preference. So if you want to fly from Ottawa to Montreal to Europe, and then drive from one city to another as your final leg of travel, you can make that request and they'll build your RTA based on that. Now, that being said, it is important to travel, or to do your best to travel via the modes of transportation that were built into the RTA. So for example, if your RTA is built with the expectation that you're going to fly the whole way, now when I say the whole way, we're not counting like taxis or Ubers, between the airport and where you're staying, or where you're leaving from to the airport. That's considered local transportation, and that's a separate thing. But if, for example, you're expected to fly the whole way, and then the employer finds out that you in fact didn't fly the whole way and elected to, for example, drive one of the legs, then what will most likely happen is the amount you're entitled to will be recalculated, and you may end up having to return some of the funds that were provided to you if the amount that you're actually entitled to based on how you actually traveled ends up being less than what was provided via the RTA at the beginning. So best practice would be to decide how you want to travel, ask your FSD advisor to build your RTA based on that. Most people will want to just fly the whole way, but some may have other preferences, and then travel based on how the RTA was built. So just a few comments about remaining at the same post. There have been some questions over the years regarding do you get FSD 15, which is again the relocation FSD, if you've accepted if you've either had your posting extended at the same post, or maybe you've accepted a new assignment, a different assignment at the same post, or maybe you're just going to stay there because your spouse or partner is being assigned there. Do you qualify for 15? And the answer is, unfortunately, no. You don't qualify for 15 unless you're actually moving from one place to another. 15 is intended to facilitate relocation, and if you're not actually relocating, then you don't qualify for FSD 15. It is, however, of value to note that there is such a thing as a local move. A local move basically means that you're not moving from one city to another or one country to another, but you're moving from one apartment or home or staff quarters to another in the same area. Local moves don't fall under FSD 15. They fall under FSD 25. They do happen, and it is possible to move from one accommodation to another at the same post. It is, however, important to note that local moves are discretionary, and it's up to the employer to decide if a local move will be approved or not. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about deferred relocation travel and FSD 50. So what is a deferred FSD 50? If you're cross-posting, meaning you're going from one post abroad to another, you're normally entitled to a pit stop in Canada in between the posts. So, for example, if you're I don't know, in Europe, and you're going to cross post, so you're going directly from one assignment abroad to another, and you're going to cross post, I don't know, from Europe to Central America. You're usually entitled to have a pit stop in Canada on the way, and the rationale is basically to allow our members and if applicable, their families, to do things like attend to financial matters, attend medical appointments, and basically take care of whatever business they may have in Canada. Also, you may need to access your long-term storage if, for example, you're being cross-posted from a country with a cold climate to a country with a hot climate, or vice versa, that type of thing. It does happen sometimes, though, that you're so desperately needed at your at your new post that they ask you to go directly from your old post to your new post without having a pit stop in Canada. And when that happens, then you become entitled to something called a deferred FSD 50. So basically, it's an extra trip that you'll be allowed under FSD 50. We'll talk a little bit more about what FSD 50 is a little bit later in the presentation. But basically, it's an extra trip that allows you to travel from your new place of duty, wherever that happens to be, back to your headquarters city, so that you can attend to those types of things that I mentioned, maybe medical appointments, dentist appointments, appointments with your bank, accessing your long-term storage, those types of things. Now, number 3 on my list there is, can a deferred FSD 50 trip be used to travel anywhere other than the headquarters city? And the answer is usually no, but sometimes, which I appreciate may not be very clear, so I'll expand a little bit. Something that we added into the most recent version of the FSDs is, if your last place of duty in Canada was somewhere other than Ottawa-Gatineau. So for example, you were assigned to a regional office, like maybe Vancouver or Toronto, and you have things there. Maybe that's where your bank is or your medical doctor is. If your last place of duty in Canada was somewhere other than Ottawa-Gatineau, then you can use the deferred FSD 50 trip to go to that location to attend to those things there. But you can't just use the deferred FSD 50 to, visit a friend or family member in some, random city in Canada. Basically, for most people, it's going to be Ottawa-Gatineau. But if your last place of duty in Canada was at a regional office, again, the examples I gave were Vancouver or Toronto. I know there are others. Then you're allowed to use the deferred FSD 50 trip to go there. Just one thing I kind of skipped over that is maybe important to mention. You can't decide that you're going to take a deferred FSD 50. The only thing that triggers it is the employer forcing you to go directly from your old post to your new post. So the trigger is a decision by the employer to send you directly from one place of duty to another without having time for a pit stop in Canada. That's what triggers a deferred FSD 50. It's not, you know what, I don't really feel like going back to Canada right now, I'll go later. That would not qualify you for that deferred FSD 50 trip. Okay. So a little bit about insurance. So when your belongings, and those belongings could include, normal household goods, clothes, furniture, other belongings that you're bringing with you to post, could also include your car if you're shipping a vehicle to post. It's important to note when the employer's insurance kicks in. So basically, when the moving company arrives to pack up your belongings, that's when the insurance begins, the coverage begins. In terms of the coverage provided by the employer, then that coverage is maintained while the goods, while your household effects are being shipped from A to B, and then it continues until they've been delivered to you wherever your new place of duty is. Once you've accepted that you've received the goods from the moving company, from that point on, they become your responsibility in terms of insurance. So it's important to be mindful that if you're, if you're going out on posting, you're responsible for insuring your own belongings once they're already there in your apartment or house or SQ or wherever you happen to be living. The insurance provided by the employer is basically covering them while they're in transit and under the care of the moving company. Also note the importance of inventory and appropriate documentation. It's important for your inventory to be detailed. You'll be asked to submit an inventory when you're getting ready for your move. In addition to the list of things, I recommend taking photos. There'll be certain things that you'll have to provide an appraisal for. The value depends on the type of item, but you can read about it if you like in FSD 15.17. But yeah, there are certain types of items that you may need an appraisal for if it's above a certain threshold in terms of value. And again, what that threshold is varies depending on the type of item. Just while we're talking about protecting yourself with photos and or videos, I'll also note that when you arrive in your new apartment or house or SQ where you'll be staying at your new place of duty, the first thing to do I would recommend is just walk through the whole unit and take a video. If you see anything that looks damaged or out of the ordinary, take photos and report it. That way you have a clear document of what the unit looked like when you arrived. That way when you leave, you have something to refer to in case you're blamed for any damage within the unit. Okay, just gonna have a sip of water here. Just give me a second. Okay, I guess I just covered this. So yeah, take videos, take photos. And I've noted here upon arrival and departure, because sometimes it doesn't happen often, but it does happen from time to time where we have a member that's blamed for damage that didn't exist when they moved out of a unit. So in addition to documenting things when you arrive, so again, video and photos of anything that may look damaged or out of the ordinary, do the same when you leave. That way, if a week or two later or a month or two later, you get an email saying, hey, we want you to pay for this, this thing that's damaged, you can go back to your photos and your video to see if it's something that happened while you were occupying the unit, or if it's something that happened after you already moved out, or something that was already there before you moved in. Talk a little bit about the incidental relocation expense allowance. So every time one of our members relocates from one place of duty to another, they're provided with something called the incidental relocation expense allowance. This is basically a lump sum that everybody relocating gets. Now, when I say everybody relocating, it's for the relocating employee. If you have a spouse and or kids that are traveling with you, you don't get an amount for each person. It would be for the whole family unit in that context. But the amount right now is $4,240, and that is indexed annually, so it goes up each year. And the point is basically, if you run into little expenses here and there that are not directly covered by anything else within FSD 15 or the other directives, and the expenses related to your relocation, it's basically like, well, it's not basically, it is an amount that's provided to help you address those types of expenses. So maybe you have to cancel a gym membership, or maybe there's a fee to disconnect your phone or your cell phone or your internet because you're moving. Maybe there's little things that pop up that aren't directly addressed in the rest of the directive. That's what the incidental relocation expense allowance is for. And again, that's as of this moment is $4,240. So make sure you receive it too. most people receive it automatically, but there have been rare occasions where we've had members report that they didn't receive it. So make sure that, that's something you receive because you're entitled to it. And again, it's just one for the family unit, not per person. So there were a few significant changes specifically within the context of relocation and going out on assignment that form part of the new version of the FSDs. I don't think I've mentioned it on this call anyhow, but normally the FSDs are renegotiated roughly every 6 years. So the previous version was published and took effect April 1st, 2019. The current version last year in 2025, and hopefully there'll be another version in 2031. Just as an aside, if you notice that there's something in the FSDs that you don't like or you find isn't working well, feel welcome to send us an email, again, info@PAFSO, and we're keeping a list of things we'd like to see changed in the next version. But in terms of some important things to note in the current version, firstly, within 15, there's now something called the Flexible Relocation Expense Fund, which you can find in Appendix G. Basically, what it allows for is you can opt out of certain things, so decide not to accept certain things that you may be entitled to. For example, traveling via business class, shipping a car, reducing the amount of goods that you're shipping to post, reducing what you're storing in long-term storage, and by agreeing to accept less than what you're entitled to in those areas, you can build a fund, which can be used to pay for certain other relocation-related expenses. I don't have time to get into all the ins and out of that, but it is worth looking into within FSD 15, I think 15.3. And if you have questions about it, you can ask your FSD advisor. And yeah, it's worth looking into, because if there's something you're not going to use, but you're entitled to, it may be possible to get some money to help pay for other relocation related things. I've already noted the next two under FSD 15 there, but I'll just touch on them again quickly. So you can now mix your modes of travel if you don't want to if you don't want the whole trip to be by air, which is the most common. You can add a leg that's by boat or by car, or basically mix those three modes as is your preference, and that's something new as of last year. Yeah, just the incidental relocation expense allowance did go up, as I mentioned. It's currently $42.40, and it's adjusted annually. Okay, a little bit about how 50 and 51 have changed, and I appreciate that there may be some of you newer to FSDs and may not understand what FSD 50 or 51 are, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But just in terms of a change of approach, it used to be, okay, maybe I'll back up a little bit. So FSD 50 is to facilitate travel away from post. It used to be called the Vacation Travel Allowance, but the employer didn't like that name very much. So now it's called Post Travel Assistance. But the old name kind of gave away what it's primarily used for. It's basically to take a break, to have a trip away from post. And then 51 is different. 51 is used for for visiting certain types of or categories of family members in Canada, or having them visit you at post. It used to be before 2025 that you had to request the funds for each of those types of trips each time you wanted to take one of those trips. That's changed as of last year. Now, when you arrive at post, they just give you the money for your first year's worth of trips. And then if you qualify for more trips beyond the first year, more funds are added as you move along. So it's been a bit of a, there have been some growing pains in terms of the employer getting used to that new process. But as far as I'm aware, it's working quite well now. It's taken some time. But yeah, I'm of the opinion anyhow, it's better than the way it used to be, where you used to have to request the funds for each trip, whereas now it's just provided automatically. So I'm not going to go into detail about these FSDs, but I will touch on them briefly, just so that you have some general awareness of what they're about and why they might be helpful for you. So starting with 18, FSD 18 is Special Family Separation Assistance. If you have a spouse or a common law partner and they're not able to go to post with you, either because it's an unaccompanied post or because they need to stay behind in Canada, for example, because they're enrolled in school, or they have a job in Canada and they're not able to leave the job, you may qualify for FSD 18, which provides for a few things, but probably the one that people talk about the most and is perhaps the most helpful is they can basically, if you qualify for FSD 18, they can reduce your shelter share at post. So that's basically the rent that you pay when you're at post, to acknowledge that you're maintaining two households, like one where your spouse or common law partner is living in Canada, and then the other one at post. So it's a way to reduce the financial burden on families. So you're not paying for two places to stay because of being posted abroad. So if you have a spouse or common law partner that's going to be staying in Canada, it's worth communicating with your FSD advisor about FSD 18 to see if that's something that you would qualify for. So we talked a little bit about FSD 25 already, but basically FSD 25 relates to where you're going to live, the place you're going to stay while you're abroad. And built into FSD 25 are a few things. Probably the most important within the context of this conversation is how much shelter share you have to pay while you're abroad. So shelter share is the term in this context that's basically used to describe rent. So basically how much rent you're paying abroad for the accommodation that you're staying in. All of that can be found in the appendices attached to FSD 25. Last time I checked, I think most of our members are paying it kind of in the neighborhood of like $1,500 to $2,000 a month, but it depends on what your current salary is, and also how many people will be living with you at post. So it's probably a good idea for you to familiarize yourself with FSD 25. 32 is daycare assistance. So if you have a younger child that is going to be living with you at post, and the intention is to send your child to daycare while you're at work, it is worth looking into FSD 32 and having that conversation with your FSD advisor to see if you qualify. Basically, the intent of 32 is to make sure that you're paying a similar amount for daycare in the country where you're posted relative to what you would have been paying had you remained in Canada. There are some requirements in place for 32, so not everyone qualifies, but it's worth having that conversation with your FSD advisor. So 34 is education allowances, and basically for most countries where our members are posted, 34 will kick in. It's going to pay for your children's schooling while you're there, whether it's in the French system via the lycée or at an English language school. The reason, well, there's a bunch of reasons why, but let's just say that in most cases, other than if you're, and maybe Pam can correct me on this later if I'm missing something, but I think other than if you're posted to the States or maybe Australia, your children are likely to end up in some sort of a private school format while you're abroad, and FSD 34 pays for that. There are also some situations where for whatever reason, the child doesn't accompany the employee parent to post, and may end up in a school that has a boarding option here in Canada. FSD 34 can pay for that, and there are certain circumstances where FSD 34 will help out with certain expenses for children of individuals posted abroad when they're attending post-secondary institution in the National Capital Region. So those are things to look into. I expect if you've received your PCF yet, and you have kids and the kids are going with you to post, you've probably already started speaking with your FSD advisor and potentially also the mission about education options at post. Posts normally have their own list of approved schools, and then it's a matter of deciding what school on the list you're gonna send your kids to. There are less common occasions where a parent wants to send their child to a school that isn't on the approved list. That requires more time and planning, because if it's not on the approved list already, it needs to be it has to go through an approval process, and there's not necessarily a guarantee that the school will be approved. But anyhow, that's kind of a long and convoluted way of saying, if you're not having conversations with your FSD advisor about schools for your kids yet, and you have your PCF, you definitely should be getting that ball rolling as soon as possible. We talked a little bit about 49 already. So 49 is new in the 2025 version of the FSDs. Basically, it's this mechanism that allows certain travel allowances to be paid out to people going out on posting as soon as they arrive at post, and then topped up on a moving forward basis, depending on what that individual qualifies for their posting. So that's something to think about and potentially have a conversation with your FSC advisor about. We also talked a little bit already about 50 and 51. I don't think I really need to go into them again, but just quickly, FSD 50 is allow you to take is in place to facilitate your taking a break from wherever you're posted. Again, it used to be called the Vacation Travel Allowance, and I think that name was more helpful in terms of describing it, but here we are, it's got a new name. And you'll qualify for a certain number of FSD 50 trips based on the hardship level of your posting. And then 51 is family reunion. It's usually in place to allow reunions, connection with family members such as children and spouses who did not accompany you on your posting. Okay, I think that's about it. Yeah, all right. So I'm going to minimize my presentation window here. I'm guessing I've been talking a fairly long time, so I'm guessing there's probably some questions. So what
There's
do
a
we
few
got here?
questions, so I sort of grouped them into categories. So there's quite a few questions on the FREF and what's covered. Are things like air tags for luggage covered? Has anyone ever gotten coverage for additional expenses if they're coming from outside the headquarters city? Could you just talk a little bit about, and is there a list of expenses that are included or not? So maybe can you just go into a little bit more detail about the FREF and the
Sure,
specifics of what it can and can't be used for?
sure, no problem. So the FREF, and if people aren't clear with what that is, that's that new fund that you can build by. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I don't think we need that anymore. So this is the fund that you can build by foregoing or deciding not to accept certain things that you may be entitled to, and then using that money to direct to other things. There is a short list of things that are automatically approved under the FREF. I'm going to say it's at 15.3. I don't have the list in front of me at the moment, but there is a short list of things that are automatically approved. Um, Unfortunately, if it's not on the list, it's subject to GAC, to the department they have the scope to decide whether they're going to approve additional things or not. And from what I've seen, they have not been approving expenses related to moving from like a telework location, for example. Um, in terms of things like air tags, I mean, you could certainly ask your FSD advisor if that would be approved. It's not on the approved list. I can say that off the top of my head. That sort of thing I would think would be more appropriate to pay for with the incidental relocation expense allowance. So that $4,000 that I talked about during the presentation, air tags are the kind of thing that you could use that money for. But you know, it may be worth your time to send a quick email to your FSD advisor and say, hey, could this be covered? And actually, on the topic of the FREF, I will say try and get some clarity on what you're interested in having covered before the relocation happens and before you agree to forego whatever it is you're going to forego to build the fund, because it has happened in the last year where people asked to get things approved after the fact, and they were like, well, if I had known that this wasn't going to get approved, I would not have foregone what I did. And yeah, it's better to get clarity on that in advance for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of questions about things like, what does issued mean for your RTA? And is that when you get the email or when you actually get the money? And I mean, my question would be, how much do you trust the department? The approval email is enough to say, yes, it's approved, but personally, I always waited until I got the money, just in case something goes wrong. So was another question about the specific cap on education rates for schools. And I think, that's something that people will have to follow up with their FSD advisors about, because that can change from year to year, from location to location. I think that, like, that's not something that we can answer, I don't think.
I don't think I rec- I've been with PASO for almost 10 years, and I don't recall there being a situation where the cap was an issue. Um,
No. No, and usually people can make a case, like even if there is I don't know if there is a cap in some cases, but even if there is, and there's a place that is really a suitable school, um, you know, I've seen personally at posts that the mission has gone above what they were expecting for, for specific reasons. There are a couple questions about storage and like, can people go in and out of their storage after after they've put things in long-term storage? And what if they need to get something shipped to and from post? Who covers that? Do you know those
Yeah,
things?
so it depends on the circumstance. So sometimes there are circumstances where you can go into your storage, but it's important for people to understand that there is a cost to accessing the long-term storage. Like usually they have to move your container from the back somewhere to a place where it's safe for you to access it and then move it back again afterwards. So that's a conversation to have with your FSD advisor. It really depends on the circumstance. Like if you're cross-posting, usually it's not usually, it's always understood that you can access it at that point. If you're if your spouse, for example, comes back to Canada before you do, usually they can access it. But if I recall correctly, there's certain caveats. Like, for example, if a family member is coming back early, they want the amount that's being pulled out to be significant in order to cover the cost. So, like if for example your spouse is coming back early and they're going to be pulling out enough furniture to furnish a small apartment for them to live in Canada until you come back, my understanding is that type of thing is approved. But if they're like, you know what, there's a pair of jeans and a hoodie in the long-term storage that I really want to access, yeah, I think that would be at your own cost if that was the situation. And in terms of shipment, uh, there are certain situations where an additional shipment will be approved by the employer, but it depends on a number of different factors. So I would encourage you to have that conversation with your FSD advisor.
Oh, okay, thanks. There are a couple questions about FSD 18,
Mm-hmm.
whether it also includes spouses located outside of Canada, and whether it could just be issued because the partner has reservations about safety or feels that they have family obligations for adult children. Does this qualify as a reason for FSD 18?
Good questions. And the so the spouses located in other countries and well, just outside the headquarters city in general, we did try to get that into the directives in the last round. We did push for it. Unfortunately, we were not successful. So as of this moment, that's a no-go. And sorry, what's the second part of the question, Pam?
Whether someone could use FSD 18 because the spouse has concerns about safety or has um, like family obligations back in Canada related to adult children or things like that.
Yes, in some cases, yes. And I think one of the reasons why we built that into 18 in the last round was that, for example, there are countries where the LGBTQ 2 plus community may not be openly accepted and may be subject to persecution. So, like that would be an example where being fearful of going would, you know, may allow the member to qualify for 18. If it's not a persecution or discrimination element, and it's just like the person would rather stay in Canada or they've heard not great things about the other country, I'm going to say probably not. But that's again a conversation that can be had with the FSD advisor.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Someone is asking, with air shipments being taken away, were they replaced with anything? Was told extra baggage comes from the FREF and is not a given. Well, and the flippant answer to that is yes, it was replaced with sea shipments. Yay. But maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
We have had a number of conversations with John Chrysler and his team about this at GAC, and the short answer is no. My understanding is there's some more flexibility in terms of additional bags being approved. You know, bringing the bags with you when you fly. That again, have a conversation with your FSD advisor if that's something you're interested in exploring. The challenge with that, of course, is there are practical limits in terms of how many bags you can pull through the airport, particularly if you, I don't know, you have 3 or 4 kids and like you're dealing with them and their belongings as well. So it's it's not a decision that we're happy about, but as of this moment, that's what's in place and that's what we have to work with.
Yeah, yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. Someone else is asking if we get FSD 50 and 51 at a hardship 5, so 3 trips a year, do we get extra vacation days also, or do we make do with what we're allotted at HQ? I think the answer is, your vacation is your vacation, and this is where I would suggest that people really pay attention to their overtime and comp time, but Paul can maybe
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have more.
So the the additional FSD trips do not provide or come with additional vacation time.
Yeah, yeah. And someone's asking, okay, can they add to the storage as well? I assume it's the same issue of, well, what do you want to add, right? It better be important, not just
Yeah.
not just
I mean,
something.
there are some situations where it's approved. Like for example, if you have a parent that passes away and you've inherited a bunch of stuff. I mean, my understanding is those types of things are usually approved. But if you're this one suitcase I decide I don't want to have with me anymore, I like to put it. You may be on the hook for that expense.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Someone else asking another question. Is there a way to get FSD benefits for children born abroad when they become dependents? You have to be added to the PCF, but then you have to fill out everything, wait for the birth certificate, so on and so forth. Whole process is complicated and longer than it should be. I don't know if that's something that we've had a lot of discussion on, but
I actually am quite familiar with that issue. Something that I haven't mentioned in this presentation, but is new in the 2025 version of the directives, is there are sometimes it can be more costly to pay for the various things you need to get the documentation in place for a newborn at post or abroad. So most of those expenses are covered now, whereas before they may not have been. So when I say expenses, I mean, uh, you know, birth certificate fees, fees related to visas and passports. Uh, those types of things may have different names depending on the country and may be more expensive in some cases. So the employer should be paying for those things now, whereas previously they weren't. Unfortunately, the cost for your time,
yeah.
there is no reimbursement for that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Someone is asking a couple questions related to, when should you terminate your lease if you just got confirmation of a posting off cycle but no PCF yet? My
Mm-hmm.
answer would be you don't really have confirmation until you have your PCF. So don't do
Correct.
anything until you have your PCF. But yeah. So
Yeah.
did you want to say any more about that?
Well, I will. So yeah, you don't have confirmation until your PCF. You're 100% correct there, Pam. And I don't remember the amount off the top of my head, but there is, I think, something in FSD 16 that helps members out if there's what's called a short notice of posting. So I'm
Mhm.
going to say it's 60 days maybe, but don't hold me to that if that's not the
Yeah.
right number. But
Like if you have to pay a penalty on your lease because you need out, like you weren't able to provide reasonable notice to your landlord, for example, then you can claim the
the
cost
amounts.
of the penalty. So
Correct, but it has to be within the window of the definition of short notice. I think it's 60 days,
yeah,
but check FSD 16 to verify and have that conversation with your FSD advisor.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So yeah, there are a couple questions related to those kinds of things about do you have, if you don't have the official approval, what can you do? So, like in cases where an accompanying spouse wants to return to Canada early in order to visit family before cross-posting, what happens if there's a delay either from headquarters clearance or from the FSD advisor on official routing? Can this affect the RTA? Sometimes we need to plan ahead with limited flight options. What are our options? Um, I don't know. What would you advise somebody in a situation like that? Again, I'm always a very suspicious person and say, don't undertake any expenses until you have those actual final confirmations.
So, I mean, it depends on the timing of things. I don't disagree with you, Pam, but I would say this, that if you're gung ho and absolutely have to book your flights and you don't have an RTA yet, you can book your flights and
Yeah.
pay for them. It just means that your relocation will likely transfer from non-accountable to accountable, meaning you'll have to provide receipts. And at the end of the day, you'll only get reimbursed up to whatever the RTA eventually is. So you may end up spending more or less than
Mm,
what the RTA would have been. And then you may have to provide receipts. The other element, I'll just circle back to what we talked about in terms of the deferred FSD 50. Um, it's possible the employer could instruct you to go directly from old mission to new mission. And if you've already booked your tickets and it's transiting via Canada, that could
mm.
be a challenge. So just pointing that out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and I would always say if you're booking anything, like under circumstances like that, for sure get some kind of option where you can make changes or you can get reimbursed. Sometimes we've had people with like, well, I bought the very cheapest ticket and now everything has changed and I can't get my money back for the ticket. And sometimes that's an issue because the GAC will say, well, listen, we're not on the hook for that because, we had not given you approval and you jumped the gun.
Yeah.
So yeah, just be careful. Um, so I'm not sure if we got this one, but when selling a home, I'm sorry, I might have missed you talking about this. When selling a home, will the FSDs cover mortgage related expenses, for example, costs related to breaking a mortgage early? I believe so, I think. Or part of it.
Sometimes it's circumstance dependent. That you can find the information about that in FSD 16, but I would have a conversation with your FSD advisor about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Another specific question, does the FSD provide educational support and allowance for a common law partner studying abroad while accompanying on posting?
Um, the short answer is no.
Yeah,
Is the
that's
short
what I
answer. There,
unfortunately.
there are some small amounts. I think it's like under $1,000 for like helping spouses or common law partners with reintegration into the workforce, with like helping with CVs and job mentoring and that kind of thing. And there's also some money available for maintaining professional designations. But in terms of education for spouses or common law partners, no.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I might have missed, I think we might have answered this one about whether accompanying baggage comes out of the FRAF. I I just want to make sure that we did answer that. I think it does, right? Or
It
can.
can, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'll put that one as done. If a child leaves post for university, how does this
Mhm.
affect the number of freight kilograms when the rest of the family comes back to Ottawa minus one family member?
Yeah, so it's adjusted. Um, now, now there isn't usually an understanding that if, for example, the child is coming back to Canada and moving into a dorm room, they may not be coming back with their full bedroom's worth of furniture that was at post, and that the employer usually makes an allowance for that. But yeah, the whole relocation package will be adjusted based on the number of people that are actually coming back. There's a separate FSD called FSD 35 that's to facilitate children traveling back to Canada for education, for post-secondary usually. But yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered the question, but there is an understanding usually that a child moving into a dorm room or a small apartment may not be bringing their full furniture with them.
Yeah, yeah, no, fair enough. Okay, so another question. Can you please provide some info on FSD 9, time given for medical appointments pre-posting, and the time the employer shall provide the relocating employee with the necessary and reasonable leave with pay based on individual circumstances to carry out the activities related to the relocation, including overseeing of packing and so on. So FSD 9 basically versus FSD 15 leave.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be whatever is needed.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't recall anyone ever reaching out to us with a concern that the appropriate amount was not provided. Um, so maybe I'll leave it at that. And I think it's going to depend on the circumstances, right? Different people will have different needs, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, no, thanks, Paul. So I think we've gotten the last two questions are a little bit more philosophical. So,
Okay, great.
is unaccompanied postings add another layer of complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, a dependent cannot accompany the individual to post, yet very few provisions or accommodations are made to distinguish how the FSDs apply based on voluntary and involuntary unaccompanied postings. Can you speak to whether PAFSO may consider specific express adjustments or provisions to be made to expedite or assist unaccompanied postings and the provision of the FSDs? For example, if we can demonstrate if we have a principal residence and the spouse will reside there during the posting, why does the person need to apply for a shelter waiver at all? And why is there a limitation imposed that this residence must be in the NCR? Given the spouse doesn't have a choice about staying behind, this type of approval could be streamlined. Same for more clarity on FSD 51. And I think that kind of goes along with the other question, which is how often are the FSDs negotiated and how does PAFSO consult its members to define priority changes?
All right. So to answer the first person, send an email to info@PAFSO and they'll flip it to me. That's not, you have a good idea is what I'm, that's
Yeah, yeah,
something worth exploring.
yeah.
So in terms of how we renegotiate the FSDs and how we consult with the membership, happy to speak to that. So I serve as PAFSO's negotiator. I have since 2019, but that's for collective bargaining. Even before that, I was serving as negotiator at the FSD table at the NJC. So yeah, there's usually a renegotiation that happens every 6 years. So the next version of the FSDs is anticipated for 2031, which means we'll probably start at the table in maybe 2029, roughly around there. And yeah, how we collect feedback from members, there's a few different ways. One, anyone can send us an email at any time. Hey, I don't like this about the FSDs. Hey, can you try and get this changed during the next renegotiation? And we keep a list of all those suggestions. But then in the period leading up to the next renegotiation, we will send at least one, sometimes more than one a survey out to members, which is an opportunity to provide feedback that way as well. So that's how we. Oh, and of course, sorry. Go ahead, Pam. I
Oh
have
no, I
more,
was just
but
going
go
to
ahead.
jump in because last time, like we actually did our whole list, right? We did our list of proposals, and we posted it on the members section of the PAFSO website, and people were invited to submit comments like right on the document. Now it wasn't the final draft because at a certain point, we had to make decisions about what we weeded out and we had to consolidate certain things, but there are several opportunities to get, to look at in a quite detailed way what we were proposing and to make suggestions. But when is the next one due? It's not due for another three
Several
years,
years.
I think,
Yeah.
4 years.
So I expect the next process will start 2029-ish, plus or minus a year. So it might be late 2028. It might be early 2030, but I'm guessing 2029 is my best guess. Um, a little bit I'll add to that. The labor relations team sees issues that our members face every day, right? And if a member of our team is seeing something that isn't working, we'll add that to the list as well. It may be worth noting that at the NJC, it's a different process relative to bargaining. It's not just us versus GAC. In fact, it's us, PSAC, and PIPS representing all other NJC bargaining agents going at the table up against Treasury Board, GAC, IRCC, and DND. So it's a different format. It's also a little bit different in that there is a proposal vetting phase before the actual time at the table where the parties argue over whether certain proposals should be included or excluded in the process. And we don't see that in bargaining either. But I think that answers the question. So if you forget or you want to provide feedback later, there'll be surveys and other opportunities like Pam mentioned. But if you want to get it to us right now, just send us an email and we'll add it to our list. Final caveat though, unfortunately, not every proposal we receive will lead to a change in the directive for a number of reasons. Some proposals may be beneficial for a small portion of our members, but detrimental for a larger portion. So we may exclude those. Some we may just see as being unrealistic or not viable. That doesn't happen often, but it could. And then there's that proposal vetting stage that happens with FSDs before the time of the table. And of course, the employer has to agree to a change as well, which happens a fair amount, but doesn't always happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's not a perfect process by any stretch of the imagination. And, we're always kind of looking to think, how could we maybe make this easier? But so far, we have not come up with a better way of going about it. And, we do have a lot of input on this. But one caution I would make is I noticed that at this time of year, often when people go into briefings or discussions with the employer at GAC, they'll say things like, well, you don't like this FSD. Well, PAFSO agreed to it. Complain to PAFSO because, PAFSO agreed to it. Well, no, like PAFSO is not responsible for the entire FSDs. It's, they're the two sides of the table. They're all the other players. And I get very annoyed sometimes when I hear that they're doing that because I think they just don't want to face the the hassle of telling people, yeah, this is what we wanted. This is what we wanted to do. This is what we agreed to. So they try to say, well, PAFSO shouldn't have agreed to it if they didn't like it. It's not. It's by no means that simple.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Any more?
No, we're done. So thank you so much, Paul. This is great. Maybe I'll just give a very last moment if anybody has any last questions that they want to put in the Q&A. We could take one last one. And we're already a little bit beyond our hour, but I've got a couple more minutes. So we can do that news anchor thing for a couple minutes and see if there are any more questions that come in. So going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, I don't see any. So thank you very much. Thanks everybody for your participation. We got some really good questions and discussions going there. And this will no doubt not be the first time you hear from us on these various subjects. So thanks, Paul. Thanks, Dan. Thanks everyone. And hope everyone has a great afternoon. Take care.
All right.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Paul.
Bye-bye.